Imagine standing beneath the Egyptian desert, not in myth but in history. A civilization at its absolute peak, convinced it has mastered eternity. Temples touch the sky, the Nile feeds millions, and the pharaoh is not merely a king but a living god. This story begins with a child placed on that throne before his mind was ready to understand what power meant. Pepi II became pharaoh when he was around 6 years old. In ancient Egypt, this was not unusual, but what followed was unprecedented. For the first time, a child did not simply inherit a crown. He inherited absolute authority with no restraints, no equals, and no one allowed to tell him no. The rituals meant to symbolize divinity were never meant to be taken literally by a developing mind. But Pepi did. From the moment of his coronation, he was treated as something beyond human. Priests spoke to him as if he were eternal. Courtiers bowed as if his thoughts shaped reality. Punishment, fear, obedience, and worship became his first lessons in leadership. He never learned empathy through equality, because there was no one equal to him. He never learned consequence because his will was law. Over time, Egypt did not rule Pepi. Pepi ruled Egypt's reality. As decades passed, the boy king grew into an old ruler, but his psychology did not mature in the way normal human minds do. Surrounded by silence, obedience, and ritualized fear, Pepi became fascinated with control itself. Not governance, not justice, control. The power to decide who existed and who did not, who suffered and who was spared. In a system where the pharaoh was divine, even curiosity became law. Egyptian records from this period grow strangely quiet. Entire categories of documentation disappear. Administrative papyri stop explaining certain population shifts. Burial records show anomalies that cannot be explained by disease or war. Whole generations of children vanish from the historical record, leaving behind demographic shadows that modern archaeologists still struggle to explain. What scholars agree on is this: Egypt reorganized itself around the personal desires of one man. Agriculture shifted away from survival crops during times of famine. Labor networks expanded for reasons unrelated to war or construction. Entire bureaucracies emerged whose purposes were never formally named. And all of it happened quietly, gradually, normalized through ritual and obedience. This is how absolute power works. It does not announce itself as evil. It introduces itself as necessity, tradition, or divine will. As Pepi aged, his reign became less about ruling a nation and more about sustaining a system built to serve him alone. Officials who questioned orders disappeared. Priests who resisted fell silent. Governors who failed to comply were erased along with their families. Over time, fear became the primary currency of loyalty. Outside Egypt, the world noticed. Trade partners withdrew. Foreign records describe Egypt as cursed, unstable, and morally dangerous. Merchants avoided its ports. Neighboring kingdoms fortified borders not against invasion, but against contact. Egypt was still powerful, but it was becoming isolated, distrusted, and internally hollow. Inside the kingdom, villages developed desperate strategies to protect their children. Families hid sons, falsified deaths, or fled into deserts. Some provinces lost the majority of their young population within a single generation. Not through conquest, not through plague, through disappearance. And still, Pepi faced no resistance that mattered. Because absolute power does not collapse quickly. It rots slowly. It survives long after it has destroyed everything that sustains it. By the end of Pepi's reign, Egypt was unrecognizable. The economy was broken. The military was weakened. Religious institutions withdrew support. Local leaders ruled independently. The centralized state that had defined Egypt for centuries was gone in practice, even if the throne still stood. When Pepi finally died after one of the longest reigns in human history, there was no celebration. There was panic. Records were destroyed. Chambers were sealed. Names were erased. Not out of respect, but out of fear. The people closest to power understood something terrifying. If the truth survived, Egypt itself would not. Pepi's successor ruled briefly. The old kingdom collapsed almost immediately after. Irrigation systems failed. Trade routes vanished. Knowledge fragmented. Egypt entered a long period of decline that historians would later call inevitable, but which was in fact engineered by decades of unchecked authority. Pepi II is remembered today as a ruler with an extraordinarily long reign. His pyramid still stands in ruins. His name appears in textbooks. But the real legacy of his rule is not stone or inscriptions. It is absence, missing generations,
Anti-village.
broken bloodlines, a civilization that never fully recovered its population or its stability. And this is why Pepi's story matters. Because he was not born a monster. He was made one by a system that removed accountability, sanctified obedience, and confused power with divinity. His reign is not an ancient anomaly. It is a warning. History shows this pattern again and again. When power is inherited too young, held too long, and questioned by no one, it does not remain neutral. It evolves, consumes. It demands more. The details change across centuries. The costumes are different. The rituals are renamed. But the structure remains the same. Silence, fear, normalization, disappearance. Pepi II did not destroy Egypt alone. Egypt participated by allowing one human being to become untouchable. That is the real lesson buried beneath the desert. Civilizations do not fall only because of invasions or disasters. Sometimes they fall because they decide that one person matters more than everyone else. And history always sends the bill later.